Hey Jersey, the wait is over. The all-new FanDuel Sportsbook is now open at Bally's in Atlantic City. They've got big chairs and even bigger TVs. You can bet on all the games in style. This is your chance to win big. You'll feel like an all-star. Just stop in right off the boardwalk. The all-new FanDuel Sportsbook at Bally's, now open in Atlantic City. 21 plus and present in New Jersey. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
A Town Square media station serving all of South Jersey. This is 97.3 ESPN, home of the Philadelphia Eagles.
He is hit! He stumbles! He's down!
WENJ HD Millville, Atlantic City. This is Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. Now, live from the Matt Black Kia Studios.
Oh, what a move!
Here's Josh Hennig.
Hump Day Wednesday edition of Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. And, of course, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. It's free, thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. We are live at the Matt Black Kia Studios here on 97.3 ESPN. Very busy show, a lot to get to, a lot of Eagles, a lot of Sixers. Of course, text board is open for you as always at 609-403-0973. And we are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, where you can watch the show as well here on 97.3 ESPN. It's a Weinberg Wednesday. Dave Weinberg will join us to talk more Eagles and a couple other things as well coming up at 6:15 p.m. Also, Jason Blevins is live at the center tonight for Sixers versus Suns. We'll check in with him about the 76ers coming up at 6:40 p.m. But we got to start with the Eagles stuff because this is absolutely, first of all, the fact that the Eagles decided to just drop this on us with basically what was like 24, 36 hours of notice is just hilarious in and of itself. But then they actually said a couple things that were interesting for once. It's always nice when the Eagles actually decide to get up from a press conference and not just say the same old, same old. But at the end of the day, because the Eagles didn't say what people wanted to hear, that's how people react. So that's why we're in a situation where people take Nick Sirianni talking about rock, paper, scissors and blowing it out of proportion. That's why Howie Roseman not giving people the answer they wanted about Jeffrey Lurie is being blown out of proportion. That's why when Andy Weidel, who, no offense, half the football world doesn't know who he is. Football fans don't know who the personnel guy is. He's got to go for Joe Douglas, all right? But he was at the press conference, and when he talks about the symmetry between the coaching staff and the scouts, people took it out of proportion. So we're going to do our best to try to bring some clarity to that here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. I want to start, though, with the Andy Weidel point about what is going on between the coaches and the scouts, because it leads right into something Howie Roseman said about last year's draft when he was asked about it. Because how many times have we talked on 97.3 ESPN about what goes on behind the scenes? What happens behind the scenes? Well, this was Andy Weidel talking about, remember, he's basically the guy who compiles the draft board before it gets to Howie Roseman. He's the guy who handles all the scouting. He's the guy who handles all the player evals before it gets to Howie. And this is what he had to say earlier today.
Adjusting with the new coaching staff, and our staff is as well, and finding players that fit the program that Nick's establishing here. And Howie, I mean, we're an extension of the coaching staff, ultimately the scouts, and we want to go out and find the players that best fit this program. They're going to come in and hit the ground and go.
So if the scouts are the extension of the coaching staff and you're adjusting to get the players that fit their system, then what does that say about Doug Peterson and the previous regime? Is it possible that some of the bad picks that we talk about has less to do with Howie Roseman than it has to do with the Eagles coaching staff. See, we have assumed for so long certain things that may or may not be true. And so when you think about it, so if Weidel is saying that the coaching staff and the scouts have to have this connection, and that the scouts' job is to find players that fit the coaching staff, then when Howie Roseman is asked about last year's draft, when he is asked about what happened last year, you kind of have to wonder what he means when he says this.
Yeah, we learned a lot about the process last year. Obviously unique the first time that we're doing all of these on Zoom, and there are a lot of lessons learned. And I think where we are right now is just excited about the teamwork that we had throughout this process with the coaches, with the scouts, with our front office, and move for there to make sure that we have a tremendous draft this year. You know, the book hasn't been written on last year's draft either. So excited for those guys to get with Coach and his staff.
The book hasn't been written on last year's draft just yet. That tells you something right there. Because if the scouts are supposed to be an extension of what the coaches want, and Howie Roseman and Andy Weidel's mind, because remember, Andy Weidel was the guy in charge of personnel, scouting, and all that last year. If in their minds, they felt like, we got you what you wanted. We got you the players you asked for. Maybe, just maybe, the problem had nothing to do with Howie Roseman. I know for some people that might be hard to accept. But maybe, just maybe, it gets back to something we have heard about on Football at 4 on the Sports Bash with Mike Gill. Adam Kaplan and Jeff Mosher have talked about this numerous times. There was an issue in the Eagles organization with Doug Peterson coaching his coaches. If the coaches are supposed to be asking for certain types of players, and then Howie Roseman gives them those players, and then the coaches don't do a good enough job developing those players, is that really on Howie Roseman? So maybe some of everything that we're hearing and seeing has a lot more to do with there being a lack of connection potentially between Doug Peterson, Howie Roseman, between the coaches under Doug Peterson and the scouts who work for Andy Weidel. Them saying, Howie, Andy, Weidel, turning to Doug and his coaches saying, I got you this player. What happened? I got you J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. I got you Sidney Jones. I got you Rasul Douglas. I got you, and you can keep going on the list. I got you these players. But yet for some reason, Corey Clement, undrafted free agent. Greg Ward, undrafted free agent. Those are two of the most productive players of the last few years for the Eagles. Jordan Mailata, late draft pick. Vaitai, mid-round draft pick. Those are your two starting left tackles for portions of the last 4 seasons. They were not first-round picks. They were not second-round picks. They weren't even third-round picks. Jalen Mills was a starting cornerback in the Super Bowl, and he was a late-round draft pick. So maybe everything that we have been blaming Howie Roseman about, secretly, actually we've got to blame Doug Peterson for some of it. Maybe there is something to this whole, hey, you know, maybe Doug Peterson and the coaching staff issues didn't really have a lot to do with anything except for what? Doug not doing his job. I'm not saying that's what happened, but I'm saying we got to keep that open mind. Because if Howie Roseman comes in here and has a great draft, then him and Andy Weidel and Nick Sirianni obviously have a much better connection than what Peterson, Roseman, and everybody had over the last couple of years. Oh, and on top of all of that, Nick Sirianni said this today. Let's try that again. Nick Sirianni spoke today, and he said this.
All the work, like if you think you're just going to call a play when the 40-second clock starts to tick down, you're crazy. Right? You ain't going to do that. You did all the work prior to on Monday through Saturday to get ready for Sunday. It's the same thing. It's just a longer process with the draft, which I think is so cool because Howie can kind of put himself in my shoes and I can put myself in Howie's shoes. I think it's awesome.
I have never heard that analogy before in my life. And I am going to say Nick Sirianni, I think you might be onto something. And maybe if the GM understands the head coach better and the head coach understands the GM better, maybe, just maybe, we'll get this team turned around sooner than later. Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. We'll talk more Eagles with Dave Weinberg coming up next. Jay Blevins, our Sixers writer over at 97.3 ESPN.com, will join us at 6:40. Also to come here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN FM. I'm Josh Hennig, hanging out with you live here in the Matt Black Kia studios. Matt Black Kia, they want to get you approved today. Matt Black Kia on the Black Horse Pike in Egg Harbor Township. Visit them online at mattblackkia.com.
It's the 2021 NFL Draft exclusively on 97.3 ESPN. Who will the Eagles take with the 12th pick?
With the 12th pick, Philadelphia Eagles select.
Tune in to 97.3 ESPN to find out. Thursday, April 29. Round 1 coverage begins at
Swing in to Matt Black Kia and put zero down. A hit with 0% APR financing. That's deep for 75 months. A home run. Don't get fooled by a bad pitch. Matt Black Kia in Toms River and Egg Harbor Township needs your trade, even if you owe thousands more than it's worth. So get out of that old car you hate and get the credit you deserve with zero down payment and 0% APR financing available for up to 75 months on every new 2021 Kia Sportage in stock, or get a $2,500 consumer rebate only at Matt Black Kia. We want to get you approved today, and you can't make a mistake with our 4-day love it or leave it return policy. Come in today or visit us online because
It's gotta be a Matt Black Kia.
offers with approved Tier 1 or 2 credit through PM Motors Finance. Not all will qualify. 0% based on $13.33 per 1,000 borrowed. Negative equity refinance into new loan. Go to mattblackkianj.com for complete details. Expires 5/5/2021. Matt Black Kia, 6211 Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township, and now on Route 37 in Toms River.
language engaging, fun, and memorable. It starts by teaching you words and phrases, then sentences.
On some models, excludes Corvette with GM financing. Excludes prior sales. See dealer for details.
It's Bennett Chevrolet's Spring into Savings Super Sale. This month, you'll get Bennett's famous GM supplier employee pricing on new Chevys, and you keep all the rebates up to a 25% discount on some models. There's no need to negotiate. Just get here and get your new Chevy at the GM supplier employee price, and you keep all the rebates up to a 25% discount. There's another way to save big with Bennett's available 0% financing. Plus, Bennett's paying a minimum $7,000 for any trade you can bring us, regardless of condition. That's a minimum $7,000 for any vehicle towards any pre-owned on our lot. Imagine how much more we'll pay for your good quality trade. And because our non-commissioned sales staff is paid on your satisfaction, not how much you spend, there's never any sales pressure and never any negotiating needed. No stress, no hassles, no haggles. Just your best car buying experience ever. Find new roads at Bennett Chevrolet, Egg Harbor Township, and BennettChevy.com.
You're listening to Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. As always, every Wednesday we go to the Boardwalk kind of hotline and we talk with the one and only Dave Weinberg for a Weinberg Wednesday here on the 97.3 ESPN. His extra point columns are over at 97.3 ESPN.com. If you're watching the show on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, you can see Dave live, the virtual flesh, as he joins us right now on 97.3 ESPN. Dave, how you doing this Wednesday?
Doing well, Josh. Just brushing up on my rock, paper, scissors.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that because a lot of us didn't have a lot of time to prepare for Howie and company to actually speak today. It kind of came impromptu. Oh, by the way, we're speaking tomorrow kind of thing. And, you know, aside from the rock, paper, scissors thing with Nick Sirianni, Dave, one of the things I took away as the biggest takeaways for me, at least to start with, is it seems to be very apparent that they're trying to make it look like, whether people want to believe it or not, that they're trying to act like there is a huge difference between what happened last year and what's happening this year with this team, with this organization. Because if I read into what Andy Weidel and Howie Roseman were saying, they're making it like, hey, man, you know, we're going to be different this year.
Well, it probably is different only because they've had a year to know how to conduct things virtually and via Zoom and what have you, no combine for the second straight year. They were kind of, I don't want to say off guard, but it was such a unique situation last year. And this year, I think they're better prepared, as every team probably is. So I think that's the difference. But I'm not quite ready to say that that they made a mistake last year because of that and that they're going to be that much better in this year's draft. I mean, it remains to be seen depending on who they pick.
Do you read anything to Howie Roseman saying that, you know, the jury is still out on the 2020 draft class, and he wants to see how Sirianni's coaches do with the players?
Not necessarily Sirianni and the coaches. I think even if Doug was still there, I think the jury's still out. I mean, Jalen Reagor was showed some potential, but he was hurt a lot of the time, and no one knows what Jalen Hurts is going to turn out to be. So, you know, I'm not ready to automatically dismiss those guys as busts or what have you. I think there's plenty of room for improvement there, especially with Jalen Hurts, and I'm looking forward to see what he can do this year as the starting quarterback, if indeed he is, which I would assume he is, but you never know with Nick Sirianni, I guess.
No, you don't. And I think that's what you mentioned Sirianni, because he is a former wide receiver coach. That is his part of his background. And listen, he got excessively excited talking about wide receivers today. And I know people are, you know, saying this and that, but listen, at least the guy's got a pulse. Like, at least the guy has a passion and interest about something. And I'd rather him be passionate about coaching and about wide receivers than, you know, just getting up there sounding like Bill Belichick every day.
So what did you think of Gabe Kapler when he was here, just out of curiosity?
See, I was indifferent about Kapler because to me, Kapler was one of those guys where I never thought he was a fit for Philadelphia. I thought he was a strange hire. And I think there's a long-term possibility that Kapler has a much better coaching career with the Giants than with the Phillies, just because of the fact that I felt the Phillies organization and the city was a bad fit for him.
Well, I think Sirianni's in the same boat, honestly.
Okay.
I think he's in over his head here. Certain guys are built to coach here, to play here, and I'm not quite ready to I just have my doubts about the guy. I haven't been impressed at this point. Maybe you have, and there's nothing wrong with that. I guess different strokes for different folks, but I think it's a disaster waiting to happen.
Is there anything specifically about what he said or how he's acted that makes you feel that way?
Just his overall attitude, I guess. I mean, I understand being enthusiastic and stuff, but like a couple of weeks ago, for example, lauding the praises of his brother as a high school coach. This rock, paper, scissors comment. I know you probably think it was taken out of proportion, but just why would you even bring that up? I just don't understand. It just seems like so. I understand being enthusiastic and being positive, but it just seems like he has that Gabe Kapler-esque positive spin on everything, and no one's earned a starting job. You really think Fletcher Cox has to fight for a starting job here? Miles Sanders, Dallas Goedert, Jason Kelsey, really? I mean, it just seems like he gives speeches that you would hear at a high school game.
Dave Weinberg joining us for a Weinberg Wednesday here on 97.3 ESPN at Dave Weinberg 19 on Twitter. Dave, with that being said, the one thing I did take away, this was just me, my personal opinion.
Mm-hmm, sure.
I liked what he had to say about the wide receivers because I feel like his perspective on the receivers. Now, listen, maybe it's because he's just a really good wide receiver coach, offensive coordinator, and maybe he's not set out to be an NFL head coach. So maybe that's part of it. But, for me, when he talked about the X receivers, about like, listen, an X receiver is this. And when he said that, I'm looking forward to, maximizing what these guys do, I feel like that maybe this guy might be able to do better with the talent that's here than maybe Doug Peterson was, because maybe Peterson was better suited for other aspects of the coaching of the game.
Maybe, but don't you think Nick Sirianni should have more on his plate than just worrying about the wide receivers? He's not the wide receivers coach anymore. He's the head coach now. So you have to rely on your wide receivers coach to coach those guys up, and your offensive coordinator. I do think that having his background as a wide receivers coach is going to come in handy. They have not had good wide receivers coaches in recent years. That's evident. You can go all the way back to, I guess, Greg Lewis for that. And that I think the fault kind of falls on Doug Peterson a little bit, but I'm more of a Doug Peterson fan, I guess, than you are. I don't know, but I'm not willing to blame him for what went wrong.
I said I'm not a Doug Peterson fan because, in my opinion, they should have never fired him. They should have should have found a way to keep him. I've been consistent on that. My thing with Peterson is that I just wonder sometimes, because of different things we've heard and different things we've read, that maybe Doug Peterson was in a no-win situation because of the fact what happens in the front office, how it relates to the coaching staff, and almost feels like after today's press conference, this was almost the Eagles' way of saying, we found a guy who matches what the front office likes with the coaching staff, and they may not work. That may be a bad thing because of the fact that maybe part of the problem is the front office and the people. Because no offense to Andy Weidel, he might be a great guy, but he said a lot of nothing today, as far as I'm concerned.
Right. Nick Sirianni is a great fit for them because he's their yes man. He's going to do whatever they tell him to do, and Doug had earned the right, I thought, to maybe have a little bit more say, a little more input into that coaching staff than Jeffrey Lurie evidently didn't agree with that. So that's why, all of Nick Sirianni's coaches are handpicked by Howie and Jeff. And maybe, I'm sure Nick had some input into it, but I just think they got the coaches that they wanted. And and I think Nick is a kind of a reflection of that. I mean, the fact that Nick had no other interviews until before the Eagles came calling, that tells you all you need to know.
Dave Weinberg joining us here on 97.3 ESPN Weinberg Wednesday here on Game Night. Josh Hennig hanging out with you along with Dave as we do every Wednesday here on 97.3 ESPN. Dave, Were there any positives, or was it all negatives for you from the presser?
No. I appreciate the enthusiasm and the fact that they seem to have really done their due diligence as far as the draft is concerned. Andy mentioned that they interviewed 120 players at the Senior Bowl, which is pretty impressive. They seem to be really doing their homework, but I would like to think they do their homework every year. And for whatever reason, it just hasn't panned out the way they were hoping to. So it remains to be seen if that happens this year. I mean, it looks like they've set themselves up to have a pretty successful draft, but then again, that was the case in the last couple of years, and it didn't work out that way.
Do you read anything into them suggesting they might go offensive line in this draft?
Not for the first round pick, I wouldn't think. I mean, I think you've probably talked about. That's not the so-called sexy pick, although they do need offensive line help. No question about that. However, they're in a position now, I think, where you can't take a guy to groom with that first round pick now. You have to get a guy who's going to step in there and be a starter right away, be an impact player right away at 12, whether it's a corner, wide receiver, or what have you, or edge rusher. They can't afford, I think, to get a backup, some guy who might be a starter down the line with that first round pick. I don't think the fans would take very kindly to that.
Dave, one of your extra point columns over at 97.3 ESPN.com. We can transition a little bit here.
Sure.
Well, the last two actually were both about boxing.
Mm-hmm.
One was about Holyfield Forum, which was a fun story to read for anybody who gets to go check that out over at 97.3 ESPN.com. But the story before that, you and I both had written about Clarissa Shields last week. I was more about the PFL side. You were more about the boxing side for Clarissa Shields. And what's interesting to me with her is that she's in a position to do something that we've never seen before. And that is she's endeavoring, not saying it's going to happen, but she's endeavoring to be a champion in both MMA and boxing. And what's interesting to me is that we've seen people try to make the transition from one side to another.
Mm-hmm.
But in your mind, what makes her and her opportunity different?
Well, she's got a lot of ability as far as, obviously as a fighter. I mean, she's just, she knows she's been in pressure situations. She's been at the top of boxing for a number of years now, not only from the Olympics, but as a pro, three division world champ. So she knows what it takes to succeed at a high level. I'd probably compare, I guess, to Holly Holm, who had some success as a boxer before having a lot of success as an MMA fighter. I think Clarissa is going to find out, though, that the transition is not going to be as easy as she thinks. It's two entirely different sports, and I don't doubt the fact that she's doing everything she can to get ready for it. But until you've actually experienced, I think, being in a cage as opposed to a ring, having somebody kicking at you, trying to choke you out or what have you, it's going to be interesting to see how she handles that kind of adversity, that kind of pressure. I think she will, but they're going to bring her along slowly, which they should until she gets more experience. But I'm not expecting her to be dominant right away as she is as a boxer.
Right. And I think that the way the PFL already has a precedent for what they did a couple of years ago with Kayla Harrison. They brought Kayla in, they started out very slowly, and then a year later they put her in with the regular competition. And I think if you look at doing the same thing with Clarissa, you mentioned Holly Holm. Holly Holm is one of the people that she is training with right now, Clarissa.
Sure.
There is a possibility that she has the opportunity to maybe be a little more successful than some other people have, because one of the things I find, and this is not a knock against the men, but I almost feel like with the men who have tried from boxing to MMA, they don't take it seriously enough. You know what I mean? It's almost like they think it's like a joke, or they don't understand the depth of what goes in the training for that. Whereas I feel like Clarissa, for her to say, I'm going to go seek out Jackson MMA, I'm going to go seek out Holly Holm, it shows me her seriousness with this.
Yeah, you might be right there. I mean, there have been a lot of guys who probably went into it more of as a publicity stunt. Ray Mercer comes immediately to mind. And I was actually there for his so-called fight against Kimbo Slice. And it was clear that he had no idea what he was in for. Where Kimbo, which I guess if you're talking about guys who make the transition, I mean, he's basically a street fighter who did the work, worked out with Bas Rutten to learn MMA, and was really impressive in his short span as an MMA fighter. Yeah, I think you're right. There's probably too many guys who looked at it just as an opportunity to gain some publicity rather than really put in the work the way that Clarissa's doing.
Also, do you feel like part of this also is maybe her preparing, like having a backup plan? Because realistically, the women in MMA are having much more of a thriving success in terms of competition and in terms of options than boxing right now.
Mhm.
I feel like
Very true.
if you run into at least a competent MMA fan, they can name you numerous women's fighters. I feel like if I run into a competent boxing fan, they could name you a ton of men, but they could only name maybe like 2 women.
Right, Katie Taylor, Clarissa are probably it. Yeah, you might be onto something there, Josh. Clarissa's options are very limited as far as boxing is concerned. Like you said, there aren't that many guys, not that many women out there that are at her level. She may have reached her peak as far as boxing is concerned. So, if there's a new avenue out there to explore, maybe some new opportunities, more money, more exposure, then why not give it a shot?
Yeah, and let's not forget that the next UFC pay-per-view, the co-main event and the event below them are 2 women's championship fights. So
right,
women in MMA are being promoted at a very high level. And between the UFC and the PFL, they've both shown a high aptitude to promote those women. So to me, if I'm Clarissa, from a business sense as well, this might be a way to extend my professional athletic life here, because she is a very marketable individual. I think one of the best things about her is the fact that she is a young woman who understands the side of doing the interviews and doing the promotion and marketing and everything. Whereas I think for some other women, maybe they didn't fully grasp that concept.
Yeah, I guess the fact that she has so much experience at that, like you mentioned, to be a 2-time gold medalist, and so she's used to being in front of the camera. She's used to playing the game, I guess, in a way. She knows what it takes to drum up interest, to whether it's fans or pay-per-view, which really didn't do that well, I don't think, her last pay-per-view fight. So but yeah, she knows what it takes to publicize herself and the sport. So I think that bodes well for her in MMA, I think.
Dave Weinberg Wednesday here on 97.3 ESPN at Dave Weinberg 19. Check out both of his most recent Extra Point columns over at 97.3 ESPN.com. Both great reads. Dave, before I let you go, I got to ask you, when Mike Trout hit that home run, that was the fastest exit velocity of the last 8 years in Major League Baseball, your reaction was what the other night?
What is exit velocity? I just don't, I don't get it. The ball leaves the yard. I don't care how fast it goes out. And I don't care how far it goes. As long as it's over that fence, it counts the same as a 500-foot home run counts the same as a 400-foot home run. Exit velocity, I just don't. I know I'm old. I just turned 63 the other day, and I'm get off my lawn, that kind of stuff. But I just don't understand the point of some of these things. Launch angle, exit velocity. Just give me batting average, home runs, RBIs, and call it a day.
Well, I'm sorry to report that Mike Trout is now hitting under 400 now. So he's only batting, I think, 385. So
he's got to go catch Ted Williams now. Okay, all right.
Yeah, he's got to keep up with Ted. Dave Weinberg here on 97.3 ESPN, as he does every Wednesday. Weinberg Wednesday here on Game Night, and as all guests, he appeared on the Boardwalk on Hotline. Dave, I appreciate you jumping on the conversation today.
Well, thanks, Jeff. I appreciate you having me as always. Talk to you next week.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Of course, Game Night being brought to you by my friends over at FanDuel Sportsbook. Of course, with FanDuel, you can do same game parlays to score an even bigger payout on a small bet. And of course, same game parlay insurance for all new and existing users of using FanDuel Sportsbook. Every single day, you can get up to $25 back in site credit if your same game parlay falls one leg short with same game parlay insurance. And right now, new users can get their first bet risk-free up to $1,000 back if your first bet doesn't win. So if you want to get in on all the action with FanDuel Sportsbook, sign up with my promo code Hennig to get your first bet risk-free up to $1,000 and get in on the same game parlay insurance. That's promo code Hennig on FanDuel Sportsbook. Must be 21 or to play in present NJRPA. Refund issued as non-withdrawable site credit that expires in 7 days. Max refund $25. Terms apply. See sportsbook.fanduel.com for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. We're going to head up to the center. Coming up next, Jay Blevins is live at the Sixers versus Suns game tonight. I guess the first question is going to have to be, who is actually playing tonight? It feels like that's a question for the Sixers over the last few days. Also, again, the Jays column over at 97.3ESPN.com as well. All that coming up here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Don't forget the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. It's free thanks to First Bank of Seattle City.
It's Sixers basketball tonight on 97.3 ESPN with the voice of the 76ers, Tom McGinnis, calling all the exciting play-by-play action.
Step, dribble move, spins, hangs, puts it in the air. He can't be stopped right now. Tobias Harris, beautiful turnaround shot.
The Sixers host the Phoenix Suns tonight. Coverage begins at 7 p.m. Philadelphia 76ers basketball on your radio home of the Sixers in South Jersey, 97.3 ESPN.
The 2021 Acura TLX will take your breath away. Yes, the new TLX styling is aggressive. Enough power to rival any adversary. It has a standard iVTEC turbo engine. And enough features to make you the hero. Just tell them the truth. The 2021 Acura TLX is the best sedan we've ever created. See it at your local Acura dealer. Acura. Less talk, more drive.
For attractive offers on the entire Acura lineup, visit your Delaware Valley Acura dealer today.
Swing in to Matt Blatt Kia and put 0 down. A hit with 0% APR financing. That's deep for 75 months. A home run. Don't get fooled by a bad pitch. Matt Blatt Kia in Toms River and Egg Harbor Township needs your trade, even if you owe thousands more than it's worth. So get out of that old car you hate and get the credit you deserve with 0 down payment and 0% APR financing available for up to 75 months on every new 2021 Kia Sportage in stock, or get a $2,500 consumer rebate only at Matt Blatt Kia. We want to get you approved today, and you can't make a mistake with our 4-day love it or leave it return policy. Come in today or visit us online because
it's gotta be a Matt Blatt Kia.
Offers with approved Tier 1 or 2 credit through Kia Motors Finance. Not all will qualify. 0% based on $1,333 per 1,000 borrowed. Negative equity refinance into new loan. Go to mattblattkianj.com for complete details. Expires 5/5/2021. Matt Blatt Kia, 6211 Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township, and now on Route 37 in Toms River.
Now, more Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Josh Hennig here on 97.3 ESPN. This is Game Night, hanging out with all of you guys. Sixers back in action tonight versus the Phoenix Suns, and joining us live from the center to get all of that is Jay Blevins, our Sixers beat reporter for 97.3 ESPN.com. Before we get to him, I want to remind you about Sixers pregame coverage being brought to you by Trifecta Therapeutics in Glassboro, South Jersey's premier sports rehabilitation and physical therapy center, treating the pros and the Joes. Visit them online at trifectatherapeutics.com. And here he is popping up live in virtual living color on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. It is Jay Blevins here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Jay, how you doing tonight?
I'm good. How are you, Josh? Good to see you.
Good to see you too. So obviously you put on your Twitter who is playing and not playing tonight, and I feel like we kind of expected new Tobias Harris to a little bit disappointed. Obviously, you'd rather have them now than later, right?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think it's a weird season. They had a really short off season. You've got COVID. Doc talked about the mental and physical toll and emotional of having to come in every day to get tested for COVID, which disrupts the morning routine with players. That is disruptive. Guys had to drive into Camden at 9 a.m. for much of the season, even on off days, time they could be resting. And it's been disruptive, not just with the amount of games that people are sitting, but just in people's routines. And professional athletes are very, very, the good ones anyway, are very, very routine oriented. And it's one of the differences between a young player and a vet is the young players haven't found that routine yet. So it's been a weird season with how many games people miss, but also just the lack of routine.
Probable starters first night, of course, Joel Embiid in the middle, surrounded by what could be argued is 4 guards, basically. Thibault, Korkmaz, Green, and Milton. Interesting choice of a lineup for the Sixers going against a Suns team that has a lot of phenomenal young athletes.
Well, that's true, but everything starts with Devin Booker and Chris Paul, and you need as many bodies to be able to switch out onto them so that they can't hunt a bad matchup, because those two guys will kill you, right? They're the difference between life and death against the Suns. So to me, it makes a lot of sense. I think I was watching DeAndre Ayton, and I'm probably higher than most people, but I don't think you think he's a guy that's going to kill you in this game. But Chris Paul and Devin Booker certainly will kill you. So yeah, I think it makes sense to me.
Yeah, and Chris Paul, I mean, he's not going to win the MVP, but you could argue that he has just had a phenomenal year in terms of resurrecting just the way people look at the Suns, bringing that kind of leadership to the organization. And I mean, he's done it multiple places now. And I think that, I don't know if he gets enough credit for the job that he has done, basically going into multiple teams and changing the mentality of those organizations.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think he is, people talk a lot about having a coach on the floor, but literally he is a coach on the floor, and there are times where players don't like their coach very much, and he's been that guy. By the way, if the sound is a problem, I do have my headset, so let me know. If it's too loud behind me, let me know. But there's a huge difference. There's only so much a coach can do on the sideline with calling the right play or yelling and cajoling players to do the right thing. It's totally different when you have a player with the experience level and the intellect, and you put the ball in their hands, that they can just do tremendous things. And I think when he began his son's career, maybe he thought, wow, he's becoming a journeyman now. I think it's fifth team. But now it's like, no, this is great for his legacy. He has shown what he can really do when you hand him the keys and everyone listens to him. So it's been very impressive.
Jason Blevins joining us here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Sixers versus Suns at the top of the hour. Tom McGinnis on the call here on 97.3 ESPN. Jason, you wrote about recently over at 97.3ESPN.com, 40 before 20. It's a great philosophy from Phil Jackson. And you discussed how the Sixers have an opportunity to do something that really sets them in a very unique position, which is if you can win 40 games before you lose 20 games, first of all, mathematically, it's a great sign of how many games you're winning versus losing, but also it's a kind of a separator. Talk about how much of a separator it is for what it would mean for this team.
Yeah, it says a lot about your stability as an organization, about your culture, about your talent level, about your ability to overcome adversity, your ability to remain focused. It's a Phil Jackson philosophy, the Zen master, and I think not all teams follow that. The Lakers obviously aren't following that model. The Nets don't seem to care whether they have all three of their guys at all before the playoffs. So it's not a universal thing. But if you go through the history of NBA champions, most of the time you're going to see teams. That's a good indicator, as good an indicator as you can get 3/4 of the way through most seasons of championship contenders. And the Sixers have the opportunity to be the fourth team in that club this year, with the Suns, who they're playing tonight, the Utah Jazz, and the Clippers. So if they don't win tonight, they get one more crack at it, and that's in Milwaukee. So it's a tough 3-game stretch to get that 40th win. They had the game the other night, which they weren't able to pull out against Steph Curry. They got tonight against Chris Paul and Devin Booker, a really fantastic team. Then they go to Milwaukee for 2 games. So, what looked like a sure thing a couple of days ago is now looking pretty tough.
But it's something to delineate because the 3 teams you just mentioned are all in the Western Conference. The Sixers would be the first team to do it in the Eastern Conference. As you said, it seems like the Nets don't have an interest in it. And this is a point that I've made before, Jason, and that is with the Nets and all their injuries, there's no guarantee that they will even be what they should be in the postseason. I mean, they played 8 games together, and now Harden had a setback yesterday. Durant's got a thigh contusion. Like, it seems like the Nets, they could be this year's Clippers, where the Clippers were last year. And the Sixers, I'm not saying they're going to win the Eastern Conference, but I feel a lot more comfortable about a team with stability throughout the year than a team that I'm depending on them, quote unquote, hitting the switch for the postseason.
I agree and I disagree. And here's where I think a hamstring is a real problem, right? So Harden's hamstring is a real problem. Thigh contusion doesn't bother me at all. And I don't think the Nets are built, that big three that they have are built where they really need a lot of cohesion. They're not trying to play great defense. They're trying to get the game to the final 2 minutes, and then they got 3 assassins that can take it home for them. And that's their strategy, right? They think they can win 7-game series because 4 out of 7 times they're going to have a guy that can close games for them. And what they don't need, like the Clippers last year, they don't need a lot of cohesion. They've got one-on-one guys that can just isolate and kill. And so, I see what they're doing. And it's a high wire act, but I'm not ready to write them off.
I hear you. I have trouble believing in high wire acts just as a general principle. Like, I just feel like when you're rolling the dice that much, you basically if they were to get to the NBA Finals this year, the Nets, they would literally be 1 in a million because we've never seen a team have guys play only 8 regular season games together and what might be 10 or 12 by the end of the season and actually make it to the NBA Finals. I just feel like there's such an anomaly. I have trouble banking on that.
Yeah, but I did talk to a lot of people late last year during the bubble, a little bit before the bubble, when it looked like Ty Lue might be the coach of the Sixers. I talked to some people in that organization, that larger clutch world, and Ty Lue has played that philosophy in the past where we're going to play different defense every night. We're not going to lock into a scheme. This was with the Cavaliers and LeBron James. We're going to try something different every night. And we're going to be last in the league in defense. And when the playoffs come, we'll have played every different style and seen every different style of play, and we trust ourselves to pull it together in 7-game series. So I've seen the version of that, like, regular season doesn't matter act, and it did work with Cleveland. So it's a huge gamble, but only 1 out of 30 teams win. It's an interesting gamble that they've been willing to take.
Jason Blevins at J Blevins NBA on Twitter. Of course, the column over at 97.3 ESPN.com 40 before 20. The quote near the end of the piece was also very interesting about how Doc Rivers views Ben Simmons. And I find it interesting that he mentioned Rodman and Pippen. And I feel like people forget about the Bulls. One of the reasons why they had those 6 rings was because Pippen's defense. He was a guy who was a shutdown defender. And I think that because of today's world of NBA 2K and fantasy basketball and people are enamored with highlights, and people don't always value the defense that Ben Simmons brings to the basketball court.
Yeah, that quote was from February. I asked Doc that question in February, and it just seemed like the right time to talk about their prospects for the postseason, with having an MVP candidate and having what is truly a defensive player of the year type candidate. And those comparisons to Rodman and Pippen, and I even threw out Stacey Augmon, and I don't think that's fair. And he was known as a defense only guy. But the Rodman stuff was really interesting. The Pippen comparison is really interesting. Pippen wasn't a great shooter, kind of a tall point forward type player, could handle a lot of ball handling responsibilities. So I think it's a really interesting comparison with Ben and Scottie Pippen.
We got the full piece over at 97.3 ESPN.com. Follow him at J Blevins NBA on Twitter. Of course, Sixers versus Suns coming up next on 97.3 ESPN FM. And all guests, he appeared on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Jason, enjoy the games tonight, and good seeing you, my friend.
Yeah, good seeing you, Josh. See you soon.
And, of course, our coverage of Sixers basketball here on 97.3 ESPN, being brought to you by Trifecta Therapeutics in Glassboro, South Jersey's premier sports rehabilitation and physical therapy center, treating the pros and the Joes. Visit them online at trifectatherapeutics.com. All right, wrapping up the show. I know we didn't get a lot to your guys' thoughts and comments out there, but it was a really slam-packed show here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Yes, Sports Bash Cash final code word of the day is coming up next. We will get more into the Eagles and all coming up tomorrow here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Of course, Sixers play the Suns tonight. Sixers play the Bucks tomorrow. So a back-to-back situation. Joel Embiid is playing tonight. No Tobias Harris. No Ben Simmons. Be interesting to see, does Ben Simmons or Tobias Harris play tomorrow night, and do they give Embiid a day off? Interesting thing to watch. Again, I wrote about Embiid's MVP candidacy over at 97.3 ESPN.com. There's a very important element about how many games he plays in that piece. Go check it out right now on the 97.3 ESPN mobile app.
It's your chance to win Sports Bash Cash up to $10,000. Enter the code words every day at 973ESPN.com or with the free mobile app. The more codes you enter, the more chances you have to win up to $10,000. Here's the Sports Bash Cash code word.
Kitchen. 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 Enter it now on our website, 973ESPN.com, or use the free mobile app. Sports Bash Cash is brought to you by Jersey Shore Federal Credit Union for all your lending needs. Get the next Sports Bash Cash code word tomorrow morning at 9:55.
It's Sports Bash Cash 10 times a day, every weekday at 55 after each hour from 9:55 a.m. to 6:55 p.m. Listen all day for your chance to win Sports Bash Cash up to $10,000.